Hello and welcome. You've tuned into ET now, and this is a special broadcast to basically remember Ratan Naval Tata, whose long stewardship saw the Tata Group transform into a global powerhouse. He passed away at Breach Candy Hospital in Mumbai around 11 p.m. on Wednesday. The 86-year-old was admitted for dehydration issues on Monday. With Ratan Tata's passing marks the end of an extraordinary corporate journey, one that not only reshaped the Tata Group but also set new benchmarks for Indian industry on the global stage. I'm Cheryl D'Souza. Along with me, I have Snehi Shah joining in. And Snehi, there's a lot to talk about, lot to remember about Mr. Ratan Tata, but joining us right now on the show to talk more about Mr. Tata, who's actually has witnessed him, who's spoken to him, who's been a part of his journey as well. We have Mr. Gurcharan Das, who's joining us, who is a distinguished author, a thinker, and an observer of the India's economy. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And I would just want to understand that you have actually you've interacted with Mr. Tata, and what's the most memorable part of it?
Well, my encounters were brief, but certainly one of them was memorable. And that is, I was a board member of one of the Tata companies, and we were holding a meeting at Bombay House. And the head of that company was Freddie Mehta, and he had invited a young man. Ratan Tata was a young man in those days, like many of us. And after about 15 minutes into the meeting, quietly a dog comes into the meeting, but instead of a fuss, the dog quietly goes and lies down next to the feet of Ratan Tata. Now, I think that picture in my memory says it all. This particular dog was a stray dog who Ratan had picked up on the street, and he had kept him in his office. And the dog must have decided it was time to go and visit his master. And he had discovered a way to get into the meeting. And there it was. I think it says a lot about the person, Ratan Tata. But, we mourn the loss. We mourn his loss not because of his own wonderful personal qualities, but for something bigger. Because after all, he was the head of India's most admired group of companies. And in his time, he took that business from 4 billion to 100 billion. And the fact is that he got the brand Tata got known around the world thanks to the acquisitions that he made of Tetley Tea, of Land Rover, Jaguar, and of course Steel. Plus, I think that we Indians, we still look to the Tatas. I mean, that's the legacy. After 160 years of Tatas, we look to the Tatas today for integrity, for philanthropy, for professionalism. And these are very, very real qualities. And therefore, he is still the conscience keeper. In other words, the Tatas are still the conscience keeper of India Incorporated. And that is really the big significance of Ratan Tata.
Mr. Das, thank you for that view coming in. And we have known the late Mr. Ratan Tata to be a fond of dogs and a great lover of dogs as well. But like you mentioned, he was always gentle, he was soft spoken. When you take a look at his his activities when it comes to the Tata Group of companies, he was nothing short of aggressive in terms of the acquisitions that he made, just like the ones you mentioned. What do you think is his, or what would you call his biggest contribution and the most enduring contribution to the Tata Group and the industry at large?
Well, I think he came at a good time. Let's put it that way. He was also lucky. JRD died in 1991. And 1991 is the year that he took over, but it was also the year that India won its economic freedom from the wretched license Raj. And so the timing was good, and India had opened, and suddenly for Indian companies, it was something that Indian companies were free to now invest abroad, and he, with his acquisitions, really made India overnight, I mean, a significant player in the world. And as I said, one of the few brands that the world knows of India is Tata's. Um, but I mean, a person also makes mistakes. Uh, in my view, my favorite project that he had was the nano car. Now, that was a wonderful car, and it was available for 1 lakh of rupees. But the Tatas made a mistake. They called it the cheapest car in the world. Now, if you are an aspiring family which is going to get its first car, you don't want your car to be called the cheapest car in the world. I mean, I would have put Shah Rukh Khan in it and said, "This is my favorite car." I mean, that's the way you market. But, we don't win them all. And certainly they didn't. But, on the other hand, he deeply admire the decision that they took. And in fact, against the board's reluctance, Ratan Tata played a significant role in taking back Air India, which was stolen from the Tatas by the Indian government during the license Raj. And it was a tough decision, because taking over a public sector company with all the bad habits that public sector creates in its employees was a risky decision. And it's still it's still out. The verdict is still out, whether from a business point of view it was the right decision. But both JRD and Ratan Tata loved airplanes, and you've got to give it to them that if you have some passions in life, why not? And I think the Modi's government was very lucky that it got someone to take Air India off its. I mean, Air India was bleeding the country and had been bleeding it for a long time. So he did a big favor. Now let's hope for the best. Let's hope that Air India, the merger with Vistara and all, goes through. But it's still considered a risky decision.
Actually, Mr. Das, like you mentioned about Tata Nano, while I was just a budding journalist, I remember going in for the launch of Tata Nano, and there was Mr. Ratan Tata, and had the privilege of at least seeing him in a person, and the aura that he carried around, and also the calmness, the softness, the politeness. You could actually see it even from far distance, the way how he greeted all of us young journalists over there. But I wanted to understand from you, what do you think Ratan Tata's legacy will be for the future generation of entrepreneurs and leaders in India now? Because he has supported a lot of startup companies as well.
Well, it's going to be many things, the legacy, and it's hard to call one thing that you're asking. But let me just expand. And this is not in his only legacy, but certainly one legacy of his was that soon after he took over from JRD, the reality is that uh, Bombay House, the Tatas, were facing a boardroom tussle because three of the largest and most admired companies of the Tatas were under very independent, I would call them, using the Persian word, satraps. They were satraps, they were independent, they had egos, bigger than life egos, and they were doing their own thing. And even JRD, before he died, was in awe of them. But Ratan Tata recognized that, look, they are part of the Tata Group. And we can't let these independent chaps go their own way. We are, after all, one brand, one Tatas. And so he engaged and he came up with a brilliant idea, which was to implement something that was already there in their rules, which was to retire people at 70. And luckily, two out of the three were over 70. And he pushed in that rule, and that's how he eased them out. And the third one, I'm talking now, Rusi Modi and Darbari Seth of Tata Steel and Tata Chemicals, eased them out that way. And the third one was Ajit Kerkar at Tata Hotels. And at those hotels, he too was a sort of an independent baron, duke of his kingdom, and but he found a way also to get him out. So this was a legacy because it showed that no one is above the institution. The Tatas was an institution. It's a 160-year-old institution now. And it's a good lesson for companies to have. The second legacy I would put as at the end of his career. And, we all remember that another boardroom drama where he had appointed Cyrus Mistry, the head of the largest shareholder of Tata's, which was Shapurji Palanji, and for many, many years. He appointed him as his successor. Well, it didn't work out. There were differences. Finally, Tata had to, he had to remove him, and it was messy because he went to court, etc., etc. But anyway, the end result was the Supreme Court came in favor of Ratan Tata, and the Tatas appointed a professional manager. Chandrasekharan, who'd been running TCS for many years, and a very, very good choice. And the reason for the legacy is that it's a lesson to the whole of India Incorporated that, my God, you should not assume that your son or your relative or your nephew should run the company. You should get the best person to run the company. We don't want to make the mistake in Indian business that the Indian politics has made, where we are filled with dynasties of all kinds.
Right, Mr. Das. Pardon me to interrupt you. I just want to quickly address the visuals that we are seeing on air. If we could just bring that up for our viewers. We are getting live visuals as of now coming from the NCPA Gardens, where Mr. Ratan Tata's mortal parts have been actually kept, his mortal remains have been kept for viewers and everybody from the industry and everybody in general who wants to pay respect to it. And as per schedule, the Tata Trust statement said that his mortal remains will be moved from NCPA Gardens to the Worli crematorium, and we have visuals of that coming on air right now, where his mortal remains have been wrapped into the with the Indian flag, because according to the state of Maharashtra, he will be given a state funeral and respects accordingly. As of now, what we can see is his mortal remains are being transferred from where they were kept at NCPA, and he's been taken into a hearse with white flowers, and based on the statement that we have from the Tata Trust, his mortal remains will now be moved to the Worli crematorium in just a short amount of time, where his remains will be cremated, which is in fact a slight change of rituals that we are seeing coming in from the Parsi community, where more and more Parsis are now opting for the cremation route rather than their traditional way of bidding goodbye. But well, yes, these are the live visuals on air. But let me take it across back to Mr. Das, in fact. And Mr. Das, like you were talking about Mr. Tata's role in a big part that he played for when it comes to the globalization of Indian companies. Tell us a little bit more about what role he had to play, what impact he created, and how did he help put India on the global map, because Tata is one of the biggest companies in the world and it's a huge conglomerate. So tell us how his efforts have helped shape that.
Yes. Well, I was just recalling to you that towards end of his career, they have handed over the Tatas, the whole Tata's Industries, Tata Sons, to a professional manager. And that's an inspiring lesson for the rest of India, because far too many Indian businesses are being run by incompetent sons or incompetent nephews, when the right person, there are hundreds and thousands of young Indian managers today who are being trained and who are much better equipped to take over business. This idea that my business can only be run by my family, this should go away. When a business community matures, when it realizes that a family, once you create a company, you have done a great job, but don't mix it up with your family and the family disputes that go on, and they hurt businesses. So it's time for every businessman to start looking for a successor who is a professional. And don't give the idea to your children. Your children should have their own startups and they should create their own businesses, but not expect to run their father's or their uncle's business. That, I think, is the important lesson that I have for the Indian business. But before that, I again want to repeat the legacy of where he went against three very powerful Tata satraps who had very big egos, and he finally removed them. And the lesson was there that the institution is bigger. The institution is bigger than an individual. And no one, as they say, is above the law. Similarly, no one is above the institution.
Absolutely. Thank you, so much, Mr. Das, for joining us today and helping us also remember and celebrate the life of Mr. Tata, also sharing your anecdotes with all of our viewers. Visuals on you.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits. And then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.